show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
G'day and welcome to episode 101. Well, I just thought we'd be a bit of our Indigenous.
Well, that's not Indigenous, but anyway. Anyway.
My name's Jack Katz.
And I'm Aspasia.
And welcome to episode 101 of Down South Anomalies.
This is the 101.
Yeah, now we're working towards some interviews that are coming up. But I thought we'd actually throw ourselves into the ring of the mockumentary with Mockumentary that shook the world.
Absolutely.
Now, a mockumentary is an interesting thing. It's a portmanteau of mock and documentary.
Yes, yeah.
The term originated in the 1960s, and it's film and television programs depicting fictional events but presented as real. Sometimes these mockumentaries actually transcend the term, and they become what I believe, and what I'm working on with you is a book that's going to take us a number of years of how the gift of prophecy, the notion of telepathy and insight into the world around us, consciously or unconsciously, is revealed in the landscape of popular culture.
Exactly.
Always has been there. Rob Reiner, believe it or not, brought about the popular use of this term when he directed Spinal Tap. But we're not talking about Spinal Tap.
No, we're not talking about Spinal Tap. We're not talking about funny things.
We're talking about the anomalous world.
We are.
And there have been so many mockumentaries over the years that no matter, despite the warnings of networks, of the producers, of the writers, the insistent warnings that come on the screen.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, people
are believing
these
it.
Things
They're believing it.
And whether they tune into it halfway through or not, they pick up fragments. And the psychological panic, I don't know necessarily the physical panic, the exploitation of popular culture drives people insane. Recently we have gone through, and I'm sure the people that have caught our last two programs are well aware that we have gone through an extremely traumatic move. And we have moved out of a warehouse of 23 years, thousands of films, books, records, literature, philosophies, and we are now in the heart of the western suburbs in Penrith, in a brand new suburb that's only been around for less than a decade, called Jordan Springs. Part of it is sinking. The other part has kangaroos, wallabies, and emus roaming around. But we are no longer part of the Gadigal people of Sydney.
Of the Eora Nation.
We are part of.
Yes.
How do you say? 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 How do you say?
Hello, my name's Richard. Warami. Today's word is Darug. Darug are the Koris of the Sydney area. That's the Aramundi kids mob. There are lots of clans in the Darug. Burrongo, Vijigal, Gobragal, Gariagal. Long time ago, Aboriginal people never wrote down their history. We learnt orally and orally. Orally by speaking, orally by listening. Darug are the Aboriginal people of Sydney. Until next time, Yano.
Thank you so much, Richard, there for explaining what actual clan, what mob we are part of out here.
Yeah.
And we all should have respect for elders past, present and emerging.
Aboriginal culture was founded on the belief that humans and nature were created as one. Country means a lot more than the tangible things that can be seen or touched. It's not just the creeks and waterholes, the hills and plains, or the rocky outcrops and mountains. Country includes all living things. It's the plants, the animals, the people, both those of today, and the ancestors who came before. It's the seasons. Country embodies the creation spirits. It's a place of belonging.
It's so important that we actually all respect our Indigenous cultures, and we have one of the most profound, longest and most consistent cultures. Mm-hmm. Orthodoxy will say between 60,000 to 65,000. Mm-hmm. I'm actually swinging in there and going into the 100,000s, I reckon. It's just a personal, intuitive feeling.
After about 50,000, it's a bit of a moot point, isn't it? How long does it really matter? I've been here a long time.
The Darug people, and we'll find out more as we progress in our new living arrangement, of which we both are excited about.
And we are connecting and starting to feel like we belong here. With people, we're meeting people, and it's a funny thing. We've always been able to, attract to us what we need, and we're actually coming across some really fascinating people out here.
And some incredible researchers.
Well, that's the people I'm talking
in the
about.
world of the anomalous out here.
Yeah. So we kind of thought we were going to be, going out. I don't know. We didn't really think about it. Well, we would
Shirley
be
MacLaine.
out. Well, no, not quite Shirley MacLaine, but we just didn't realise the history and the what's going on out here.
Yeah.
We just thought we would be going out to this suburb on the fringes of the city, and it would be kind of a bit of a cultural wasteland, and it's actually not. It's so rich in so much stuff.
Everywhere.
We've only just started to explore.
You always need to peel back.
And it's very, very exciting. Very exciting.
All right, I want to say thank you to all the well-wishers from people that missed us when we're away from Berlin to Botswana.
Yeah.
We have some incredible support out there. Our heart is with all of you, to the moderators and all the supporters of Untold Radio, all our other hosts and guests.
Yes.
Our heart is deeply with you. I need to get on to Snow White Bigfoot. I need to talk to that beautiful lady and see how her health is.
Mm-hmm.
Mockumentary, a fictional genre. Stop fiddling around with that.
Just fixing
fiction. You're not. You're making noise. Sorry. A fictional genre in which dramatic techniques are combined with documentary elements. Mm-hmm. And one of the earliest examples, let's go straight to it and I'll explain it up.
It isn't only in Britain that spring this year has taken everyone by surprise. Here, in the Ticino, on the borders of Switzerland and Italy, the slopes overlooking Lake Lugano have already burst into flower, at least a fortnight earlier than usual. But what, you may ask, has the early and welcome arrival of bees and blossom to do with food? Well, it's simply that the past winter, one of the mildest in living memory, has had its effect in other ways as well. Most important of all, it's resulted in an exceptionally heavy spaghetti crop. The last 2 weeks of March are an anxious time for the spaghetti farmer. There's always the chance of a late frost, which, while not entirely ruining the crop, generally impairs the flavour and makes it difficult for him to obtain top prices in world markets. But now these dangers are over, and the spaghetti harvest goes forward. Spaghetti cultivation here in Switzerland is not, of course, carried out on anything like the tremendous scale of the Italian industry. Many of you, I'm sure, will have seen pictures of the vast spaghetti plantations in the Po Valley. For the Swiss, however, it tends to be more of a family affair. Another reason why this may be a bumper year lies in the virtual disappearance of the spaghetti weevil, the tiny creature whose depredations have caused much concern in the past. After picking, the spaghetti is laid out to dry in the warm alpine sun. Many people are often puzzled by the fact that spaghetti is produced at such uniform length. But this is the result of many years of patient endeavor by plant breeders who've succeeded in producing the perfect spaghetti. And now, the harvest is marked by a traditional meal. Toasts to the new crop are drunk in these poccolinos, and then the waiters enter bearing the ceremonial dish. And it is, of course, spaghetti, picked earlier in the day, dried in the sun, and so brought fresh from garden to table at the very peak of condition. For those who love this dish, there's nothing like real homegrown spaghetti.
Wow.
Switzerland. Well, you know what? That was an April Fool's Day hoax, 1957. But it was the BBC and their program Panorama.
Yeah,
and
right.
It was
It's
played,
a reputable show.
Yeah, and it was played dead straight. So many people were wondering. They were in touch with the nurseries. They were out to buy the tree. They thought they'd grow their own spaghetti at home. Wow. And, of course, that wasn't possible.
Well, of course, it's, they must have thought that people would believe it because,
I just love the nuances of that English commentator. He was so refined.
You'd have to be pretty naive to think that pasta was grown as opposed to made.
Or is it the power of the media? I mean, it's
they wouldn't have been able to do that in Italy or in Greece because we make our own, noodly things. So
it wouldn't have worked on Europeans.
No. Well, I mean, Switzerland is Europe. Britain, England is Europe. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but I don't know. It's just a weird one.
Deeper Europe.
Well,
years later, decades later, CNN actually said that was one of the most despicable hoaxes ever perpetrated on the public by one of the most reputable media companies in the world. They still think it's one of the biggest hoaxes. Right. Well, was it a hoax?
Well, it wasn't a hoax. It was an April Fool's Day broadcast.
Let's go
fooled a lot of people.
Now to the world of the anomalous, and that's where we're concentrating because there are a plethora of mockumentaries.
That's right.
And you can start getting into the notion of ethnographic films and Nana of the North. What were they recreating?
Yeah.
But we're going to stick to the notion of the mockumentary.
Yes.
And the mockumentary, to me, really, the fire was lit. The wick was lit on October 30th, 1938 by Orson Welles at the Mercury Theatre.
That's right.
With their adaptation of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. And even though we've been told this caused mass panic, we realise now today that this is media eating itself. And that this story was so good that the papers actually pushed the notion of mass panic way beyond what the reality was.
Exactly.
But let's get a little taste of how that meme got out there in the media and stuck.
Americans gathered around their radios were fooled, frightened, even panicked by what they heard.
Orson Welles had shaken the country without knowing it was possible.
A mythical invasion by monsters from the planet Mars should have had so profound an effect upon radio listeners.
Yeah, well, interesting that because it didn't have the profound effect that we're all led to believe it did.
Well,
but it was an astounding piece of theatre and engineering. Lots of people have speculated. Bruce Rux did in the book Sources Over Hollywood.
Yep.
He speculated that it was an incredible piece of social engineering, very similar to when MIT or the RAND Corporation go out there to understand what had happened when one culture collides with another.
Yeah.
So
a more advanced one.
Maybe Wells was surreptitiously a surrogate for the military-industrial complex there, testing the waters.
Yeah.
Who knows? But here's a little bit of an update on just how effective that whole media exploitation of this incredible radio broadcast.
Our stupid world, the War of the Worlds, and the panic that didn't happen. It's one of the most well-known instances of mass hysteria in the modern world. But did it really happen? On the night of October 30th, 1938, Orson Welles and his radio actors delivered a dramatic performance simulating a Martian invasion on CBS radio. In the days following the broadcast, reports in major newspapers did report instances of people panicking and calling the police. More detailed scholarship argues that the supposed panic was overblown. Ratings surveys on the night of the broadcast indicated that only 2% of respondents were tuned into Wells' program, with the majority listening to other shows or nothing at all. It's likely that newspapers seized the opportunity to discredit radio as a news source, sensationalizing the panic narrative to portray radio management as irresponsible. The best analysis available is that while some people were fooled into a panic, the number who did so was very low. But would you have believed the invasion was real? The full radio drama is in the linked video. Listen for yourself and find out.
It really is worth having a listen to that broadcast.
It was
It's
an amazing
brilliantly
program.
done.
Absolutely.
And starts off with like a musical show, and then, gets cut-ins.
Yeah.
And that was incredible. And then they did those amazing Flag Saucer record cut-ins in the 50s. But I'm digressing into a completely different story.
Yes.
Now let's step up to me what is the ultimate and always will be, because I saw this live
on
with
TV.
my family.
Yeah.
I saw the panic amongst family members about the actuality. And even though at the end a disclaimer from the 7 Network came up here in Australia, I still didn't believe that disclaimer. I had bought it. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe it.
You bought it. Lock, stock and
it was
smoke barrel.
1977. I would have been 19 years of age, just preparing to leave home to go nursing training.
Yep.
And this created a shockwave. Of course, my father, Arthur, was so with the program. It was Anglia TV out of Britain in 1977.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be broadcast on April Fool's Day. And it was what the critics have termed as TV terror.
Yeah.
But it was called Alternative 3. And it was the work of the incredible David Ambrose, Christopher Mills, and the person that adapted the book in the end that came out years later, Leslie Watkins, who I actually did an interview with, thanks to Tim Critland from the Jim Rose Sideshow Circus. And Tim Critland was the Torture King.
He was.
But he also did an incredible fanzine called Off the Wall.
Yeah.
And had interviewed a lot of famous, infamous, and notorious characters in the world of the Anomalous.
UFO, UFO people. I love his interview with what's his name? Phil Class. That was
and the poodles,
classic,
walking with the poodles.
Classic interview of that disinformation king.
So, without giving too much away, because what we're going to have in the link for the first time ever is a high def quality of the entire program that's up on YouTube.
Alternative 3.
So you will be able to watch the whole thing.
And you should watch it. It's fascinating.
Australia was a very different broadcast area to the rest of the world. We got a bit cheeky down here. We put it on directly after the news.
Oh, yes. So
and it became highly
suspect. Gave it more veracity, didn't it?
Yeah. And it was to be screened worldwide on April Fool's Day. And it didn't get screened in Britain because I think there were strikes within the industry at that stage, writers' strikes, producers' strikes. Don't quote me on that. But that cancelled it to, it didn't end up to going to air to the mid-June, which created question marks around the notion of this is an April Fool's hoax.
Yeah, well, it's
why
not.
wasn't it screened on April Fool's Day?
Exactly.
And it was also stated that it was to be screened at like UFO Cover-Up Live around the world within 24 hours because it was incredible information. I think HTV7 here actually stated, during the news bulletin to hold on, they've got this breaking news. And that's what Alternative 3 was.
Right, yeah.
Alternative 3 was about a TV studio that had got a videotape from a scientist that was scrambled.
Would it be a found footage thing?
In a sense,
it was
the beginning of found footage.
Yeah.
And it had to be decoded. And it concluded at the end of the day that Earth scientists are being spirited away to Mars to create a secret colony in the British scientists with the American scientists
there. Disappearing, yeah.
And it was because they were aware, and this is where this is the gift of prophecy, because they spoke about global warming the very first time.
Yeah.
In major prime time. And they spoke about the fact that environmentally, pollution-wise,
we were on
we have to collision course with death, and we need to spirit away a certain amount of the population to Mars.
Right. How
What
many?
a premise.
I know.
So what we're going to do here, I'll speak about that interview I did with Leslie Watkins.
I actually remember seeing it, and I was like, well, what's going to happen to the rest of us? How do you get on one of these ships to go there? Because what about the rest of the people left behind? I mean, that's a bit rude, isn't it? You either all go or no one goes.
Let's have a look at a little bit of an anniversary discussion for the ATVs.
Well, next from us, the year is 1977. The country is celebrating the Queen's Silver Jubilee. Fleetwood Mac atop of the charts, and this time it's Labour who are trying to form a minority government, striking a deal with the Liberals.
But that is not all. Anglia Television are also about to make the news, not just here, but right around the world.
Yes, back then the company decided to set up an April Fool, but this wasn't going to be your average hoax. Oh no, this was going to be a feature-length documentary with actors and actresses, as they were known then, reporting on how scientists were being kidnapped to work on Mars to prepare for the end of the world.
Makes no sense. I mean, how can people just vanish off the face of the earth in this day and age? We've a right to know what's going on. Those people you've just seen have all lost someone close to them. A relative, a colleague, a friend. Lost in mysterious circumstances, sudden and inexplicable disappearance without trace. If you're wondering what this sort of story, important and even tragic though it may be, has to do with science report, well, we have to go back in time some 18 months when we began work on another film which examined the scientific brain drain from Britain. That film...
Well, the other twist to the story is that due to a scheduling issue, the programme, called Alternative 3, wasn't transmitted on the 1st of April, but the 20th of June, resulting in floods of calls from terrified viewers, assuming that what they were seeing was in fact real.
40 Years On, the programme is going to get a second public airing tonight at the Forum in Norwich, and you can see it on our website after our programme.
Well, here to tell us more are Dr. Tim Snelson, a media lecturer at the University of East Anglia, and Christopher Miles, who came up with the idea and directed the documentary. Thank you both very much for coming in. Christopher, if we can start with you. How on earth did you come up with such a concept?
Well, David Ambrose, a friend of mine, was working on a play he'd written for Anglia, and they were called plays in those days, I mean, they're not films, and he thought of an idea of disappearing people. And he hadn't quite worked it out where they were disappearing to, and he said, Christopher, it's been turned down by the Anglian board. Could we meet, and have you got any ideas to try and, rethink the show? So we had a good glass of white wine on a very hot day, I remember.
That usually works, doesn't it? Yes.
1976, that terrible summer.
Yes.
And the summer was impinging on our lives a lot then. It was really very hot in London. We were up to 35, 36 degrees. And David's wife was a French Swiss, and she took a magazine called Paris Match.
Yes.
And David said, well, what are we going to do? I said, David, you haven't worked out where the people are disappearing to, but what about Mars?
And off they went.
And that's how we started.
Absolutely extraordinary. And the reaction, of course, that was extraordinary as well. And just tell us, just give us a flavour of what it was like when people saw it and then phoned in by the hundreds to complain or say how frightened they were.
Well, yeah, news reports the following day suggest that thousands phoned into across the ITV regions, into newspapers. Some people who were scared and terrified of what they'd seen, others who were angry that they'd been taken in by the hoax.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a lot of the newspaper reports, some reported, around the ethics of this, as they called it, TV terror, whereas others were talking about the film itself as being this sort of innovative, creative piece of filmmaking, which was...
And it went global. And in Australia, we describe it today as fake news, wouldn't we? What happened there?
Well, Australia was a bit naughty. They actually put the show following the news. So during the news, the real news programme, they announced we've got this extraordinary film that's just come from Britain. and we're going to show it to you following the news. So, I mean...
You can understand why people were slightly terrified.
Oh, Australia was petrified.
Of course, it had to be completely believable, which it was for many people. And so the actors and actresses had to be completely anonymous, but some of them went on to be quite big stars after this, didn't they?
No, they weren't. There was nobody terribly famous. That was one of my problems. Yeah. I wanted to use real people.
To start with, but afterwards they became some of the big stars.
Afterwards they became stars. Yes, they did.
I mean, there was one chap I...
You can see what Chris Mills was saying there, Aspa, that basically in Australia, which is always different. It's always, like that with Apollo, that it actually caused
we always take it another
huge
step
amount of strife. But it was a worldwide phenomenon, and this distinctly did shake the world.
It did.
It was quite astounding, and still is quite astounding to look at, because in many ways it's predicting where we are today.
Yes, yeah.
It spoke about the brain drain, and believe it or not, in Britain at that stage, scientists were disappearing.
Yeah.
Some of them to suicide, some of them to maybe being abducted and taken into other countries.
Yeah.
Here's one of the headlines from newspaper.com that I came across. Viewers angry in Britain. And here is the consternation that occurred in our country. There you go. And it was ITV, excuse me, before HSV7. I got that wrong as well. Offers a response to many critics, and it raised questions of the ethics of television.
Yeah.
But really effective as a mockumentary.
Absolutely.
Years later, thanks to Tim Crickland, as we were talking about before, I spoke to the author, the primary author of this book, along with David Ambrose, Leslie Watkins. And Leslie Watkins, excuse me, Leslie Watkins, after writing this book, which was years later, and he took some liberties with this book.
He did.
He actually expanded on the story. Instead of using fictional characters for astronauts, he quoted Buzz Aldrin.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And people really believed he was onto something.
Yeah. They started to believe it, didn't they?
He actually believed that this was completely coming out of his discussions with Christopher and David, and it was fictional until he started to receive letters from MPs across the world, primarily out of Britain. His children to him started to be followed. His house was burnt.
Yes.
In the end, it reached a point where he had to leave Britain.
He did. He moved to New Zealand.
No, he actually migrated
to Australia first, and then
he came to Sydney to become the editor of the Reader's Digest.
Yes. It's interesting.
Like David Bowie, had a fear of travelling on planes.
Yes. So
he decided to use a cruise ship. He was going to write a book called Backlash.
I bet he didn't go on the Carnival cruise ship.
No. Backlash.
That's my preferred
mode
of transport, sorry.
He had a proposed book from all these letters and all this stuff that had happened to him that he couldn't believe was occurring, but knew in the bottom of his heart that he'd stumbled onto a reality. Something within this fictional story was true.
Because people of some sort of merit, like in governments and in big business and scientists, were actually contacting him and saying that there was a veracity to this story, that there was something going on.
Massive steel filing cabinet.
Yeah.
He took on the boat somewhere.
Yeah.
On that sea voyage, that entire 3-drawer filing cabinet disappeared.
How does that happen?
And tragically, he was unable to write the book.
Well, all the correspondence was in there. All his research was in there.
He actually evidently stated to us, and I've got to find this interview. I've got an audio tape.
Yes, you do have an audio tape.
And now that we've moved and we're correlating, we'll probably come across it soon enough, fingers crossed. He was getting bugged and followed here in Sydney, Australia. And that's when he migrated to New Zealand to retire. He'd had enough of it. Last week, we were discussing the incredible Ken Thomas and his relationship with our friend, late great researcher Jim Keith. Jim Keith wrote an unauthorised case book on Alternative 3, where he stated in there...
There was another nail in his coffin.
Where he stated in there that distinctly there is some truth to this. So I suggest you search out for this book by the late Jim Keith. And I suggest you search out for this book, because we certainly have a real mystery here in this incredible mockumentary. And so We will give you the link right through to a beautiful HD. I never thought we'd see that because this show was done on reel-to-reel video.
Exactly.
And it has survived. And you know, Alternative 3 Aspasia has gone out and permeated popular culture like you wouldn't believe.
Big time.
I think Brian Eno did a whole new film score to it. It was the primary influence for Peter Jackson's mockumentary, Forgotten Silver.
Oh, right. Yes, I remember that.
Quoted
that was quite amazing.
Alternative 3, you know. So it has affected so many people.
So what was the Forgotten Silver one?
That was about a whole New Zealand lost filmmaker. I can't distinctly remember it. It's been a while since I looked at that. Yeah. So how fascinating is that? I suggest, excuse me, I'm a bit wheezy this morning. There's a lot of pollen in the air. It really gets to me here in Jordan Springs, which I'm loving. And if I drop dead, well, I'm a happy man.
That's right.
And I'm with the person I love more than anyone else.
Who would that
Untold Radio. No, Aspasia. Anyway, so that's the incredible little bit of a skeleton of the one and only. Will always be part of my heart because I was there. I can remember still saying to my mother, but they've landed on Mars and lied to us. You know, she wasn't very
They're going to Mars and not taking us with them.
Now, maybe we should do this, maybe we shouldn't, but I'm going to go there. The incredible Craig Baldwin from Access Media. This did not shake the world because this did not be television broadcast, but it is an astounding piece of what I believe very early found footage colliding with the mockumentary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what's the name of it, my dear?
It's Tribulation 99.
Alien Anomalies Under America, 1991.
A hidden planet orbiting the sun exactly opposite the Earth. A thermonuclear war 1,000 years ago blasts the planet apart into the billions of pieces that form the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Despite massive genetic damage, an elite core of Quetzals managed to escape in their disc-shaped spacecraft to Earth.
Once you've seen Tribulation 99, David Icke and the Reptilian Factor can go back to the playground, really, because he has created one of the most all-encompassing collisions of conspiracies.
When we saw that, we were like, oh, my God, somebody's done it finally.
We wanted to do it ourselves. You realise that inspirational.
I don't think we would have ever done it that well.
No, of course not. Of course not.
It's just
and he's gone on to do amazing documentaries.
Is that up on YouTube anywhere? Do you know? Have you been up?
I didn't look for a link, but go out there and look for a link. I'm sure
it's called
probably
Tribulation 99
in the Internet archives. You'll come across it. But I know that the other side, is that the label or other media? You know, the DVD label did a beautiful release of that.
Yes, they did.
So you're probably better off to go and purchase it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So money goes back to Craig and that Other Cinema. Is the name of that label.
Yes, it is.
God, I tell you what, fighting through the dementia and the Alzheimer's at my age,
you are fighting very well
you
through
get. This morning, if it was in another couple of hours, I'd be completely dead with it. But So there you go. He went on to do things like Sonic Outlaws. And
yes.
He's still in San Francisco today with Access Media.
Mm-hmm.
He has promised us an interview. He's one of our cultural heroes up there with Jack Stevenson, Jack Sargent, so many other people, Matt Spong. I could go, the list could go on for other ages, Ben from Triclops. But anyway, let's cut it. We're moving through this. Let's go to 1994 and October the 30th, which happened to be, you know, suspiciously the same day as the broadcast of War of the Worlds.
Yes, it was.
46 years later, and I only recently discovered this. It's got the title of one of our favorite exploitation films from 1980, but it isn't. It is called Without Warning.
Ah, yes.
And it is one of the most interesting yet unknown, but caused shockwaves in its day. Another intercept like you wouldn't believe. Anyway, the astounding thing with this is it went to air as a movie called Without Warning, starring Lonnie Anderson.
Yes.
But within a minute or so, it's cut in
the movie, they
with news reports.
Yes.
And this actually used quite a few well-known anchors.
Yes.
They were so aware that they were homaging War of the Worlds that they had statements written in the commercial break at the start and the finish of all the supers and the bumpers.
Again, people
no one paid attention. They freaked out completely.
Thinking it was real.
Let's get a little taste for Without Warning, but we're going to give you...
Well, there's a link there for you to have a look at it.
Well, it's not just it. We're going to give you the entire thing with its original commercials from 1994 in the cleanest copy we can come across.
You can experience
it. So
for
you
yourself.
can experience it for yourself, because I watched it this week.
You've got lots of homework today, kids.
And it was really exciting. It was so worthwhile. It's basically asteroids are colliding with Earth that could wipe us out.
Yeah.
But these asteroids look like, at the end of the day, there's something exotic that Arrow and A-Tip would have
should be looking at it.
I do have a comment. The action of the Pentagon is frankly unforgivable. There is a force behind these asteroids that is clearly intelligent. The fact that they chose to land first in unpopulated areas demonstrates clearly that they meant us no harm. Because I'm no longer speaking as a staff scientist at NASA. Effective at 9:32 p.m. Central Time, I have resigned my position. We were given a gift tonight, people. We had a visitation. They came in peace, and we answered them with 2,000 tons of TNT. What if this had been Jesus? Or Buddha, or Mohammed, or a prophet of old? I mean, haven't we learned anything from history? There are 3 asteroids of a magnitude of 2 miles each and above that are on a trajectory with Earth. They are headed directly toward 3 of the Earth's most populous cities, Beijing in the People's Republic of China, Moscow, as well as Washington, D.C.
3 superpowers.
It's so well done. And that's one of the scientists that has a connection and breaks down and spills the beans, quits from his tenure with NASA and loses it. It is so effectively done. But there are moments where you look and you go, wasn't he in Star Trek?
Yes,
and
that's
that is not a real news anchor.
If you're on the ball and not buying into it, you can actually start to spot things like that. There's telltale signs. But if you just immerse yourself and go with it, you could, not notice these things and go, okay, this
and if you just had the television set on in the background, then something like this would probably be even more effective. But what I think it says, dear Brutus, the fault is not in the stars, it's with ourselves.
Within ourselves,
And we have become so acclimated to our information coming through these mediums like radio and television that we stop and initially believe the hype.
Yeah.
And look, in the last 4 or 5 years, we really started to break that down with the notion of fake news. But fake news has always been
around.
there.
It's not a new thing. It's just, I don't know if it's fake or it's somebody, putting a program together and the program actually just running, like an avalanche, taking on a life of its own and just, just careening and just smashing through everything, and people just, getting caught up in it.
You've got to be careful what you wish for. On a max consciousness level, things can occur.
Mm-hmm.
Like the human consciousness program, like Randa Nordica. You have to be careful. I believe these mockumentaries, in a way, are like a grimoire. You could be casting a spell that years later comes to fruition.
It's what you put out. You know what I mean?
When you look at Alternative 3, if you look at it now, that was one of the first programs to speak about major environmental issues, the hole in the ozone layer, global warming.
Yeah.
So how much of a mockumentary really is it?
How smart do you, or how prophetic do you need to be to know? I mean, I, as a child, when I was starting to look at that stuff on, the educational films at school that they used to show us, I've got a ton of them that are about the environment and how the pollution is really going to cause havoc with our weather further on down the track. And that, yourself, if you put something bad out in the atmosphere, it's that you breathe in the oxygen that we need to survive, to live. How, and us taking that stuff into our lungs, why do we think that we're not going to be affected adversely?
Exactly.
I mean, that's just common sense stuff. You don't need to go to university to get a degree in something to work that one out. Do you?
No.
Because I certainly didn't.
Now let's go back to Europe, where you herald from, where all that chutzpah is, and to an incredible director, William Carroll, who in 2002, during my tenure on SBS, released this astounding documentary, Dark Side of the Moon. And this is like, if this ain't the truth, well, it ain't the truth. He actually set up Christine Kubrick.
Yes.
And went in and spoke to her about her husband's filming of 2001 and reshaped it.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, you've got people like Donald Rumsfeld appearing on the screen looking like he is stating, well, we did fake the moon landing. Check this out.
On the 2nd of March 2001, a year to the day after the death of Stanley Kubrick, his widow Christiane opened his personal archives according to his last wishes. Among the mountain of documents, Christiane Kubrick found a file bearing the seal of the President of the United States, classified top secret. In it she read that Henry Kissinger had come to London to prepare a meeting between Stanley Kubrick and President Nixon.
That did take a long time. But everybody was very interested that it could be done at all. Kissinger was the key person,
Kissinger arranged to meet us at a cocktail party hosted by Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. The guests included Lawrence Eagleburger, General Alexander Haig, and ex-CIA Director Richard Helms. 30 years ago, all of them were senior advisors to Richard Nixon.
All right, one more drink and then I'm ready.
There you go. There you go.
And you have a great chance to make a fool of me.
What is going on? What in the world? Hello, Mel. How are you?
I thought this was a serious program.
I don't know. He looks a little slippery to me.
No, how are we doing this? You're asking the question. Well, but then you're going to have to translate them, so I know for sure what I'm being asked.
I understand French. I don't speak it very well, but I understand it.
Well, that was a list of who's who of the evil empire,
which brought so much
it?
veracity, and so many people again went, "Oh my God, it's finally been released." William Carroll there was quite devious.
He was.
He set up Christiane.
He set them all up.
Not all of them. Some of them are outtakes from other interviews and films he had done earlier.
Yeah, well, that's all set up, isn't it? Because they didn't know that they would end up in something like this.
The fact that you've got the tyranny of the language barrier.
Yes, because it was a French documentary.
In actually getting out of these people what he needed to make this mockumentary stating that Kubrick had actually filmed the moon landing. And so many people have gone on to do that. Jay Webner from Gaia has done an incredible series of documentaries heavily speculating, the Shining being in there. But look, it's well worth checking out William Carroll's Dark Side of the Moon. You're on Untold Radio. Where else would you be?
Hello, members.
This is Chris. I have a cool news flash from the Untold Radio Network. Starting this May 2024, members of the Untold Radio Network will be receiving special after-hours show content notifications, plus a chance once a year to hang out on camera in a webinar setting with your favorite podcast personalities. And because we have 12 different shows, it means that each month you will get to meet different podcast hosts. This face-to-face meeting will allow you to discuss anything, ask questions, offer content suggestions, and get to know all of our hosts personally. Plus talk to them face-to-face through the magic of YouTube Live. Again, this is for members only. And don't worry, you will be notified well in advance of a simple sign-up reservation for that particular host or hosts. Plus, member-only after-hour shows will be available in our reserved members-only section on YouTube. Each podcast will be producing at least one after-hour show or more per year, and one webinar meet and greet per year. We sincerely thank you for being a loyal listener of your favorite Untold Radio Network shows and becoming a loyal member. Other perks include you getting top priority in chat, guest interactions, plus getting the answers to your great questions from our hosts and guests. There is even more perks to members, exclusive wallpapers, special discounts on books, merch, and more. So stay tuned for new announcements. This is Chris, signing off from the Untold Radio Network. We will be talking soon.
And look, if you've got the time, you've got the chance, please check out all the other podcasts on the Untold Radio platform. They're all standing in their own way, and they're all incredibly supportive and bleed into each other. We need you to assist us. Make sure you put the thumbs up, you subscribe, and you get it out there. Throw it onto other sites. We're coming back from what we thought was our, complete disappearance.
No.
We're being resurrected now. So we need as much support as we can from people that enjoy the show.
Yeah, that'd be great to share it with lots of different... if you can share it to anywhere, that's fantastic.
Episode 101, Mockumentaries that shook the world. And these have certainly shaken the world. One thing I'm remembering now about Alternative 3 is that nothing is incredibly original. And even though those three writers and director all thought they were pulling something out of their deep subconscious, in 1950 in the States, there was a radio play called The Man in the Moon. It was from a science fiction anthology radio series called Dimension X.
All right, okay.
Had a very similar plot line to Alternative 3.
Really? Wow.
So,
Okay.
You might have Leslie Watkins, David Ambrose, Christopher might have been, Bills might have been listening to that as a child, and it's gone in there.
Or they mightn't have ever heard it, but had tapped into something else.
Now, you wanted to bring up the incredible UFO cover-up
Well,
live from 1988.
I
And
did.
It's not really a mockumentary,
No, it's
but it was
not.
a worldwide sensation. It
It
was
was.
broadcast within 24
Yeah.
hours.
But, when, like I said before, when I heard them say that the aliens that they have captured and are holding, like...
Richard Doherty and the Avery.
That's
of
right.
Cloaked
Yes. That they like,
agents.
what was it, vanilla ice cream?
Strawberry ice cream.
Or strawberry ice cream and something.
Tibetan music.
And Tibetan music. That did it for me. I was like, this is crap. This is a construct.
Yes.
Straight away for me. And
But a very interesting construct because
it
they were
was,
playing with people's perception. It's perception management out of
absolutely.
intelligence.
But up until that point, I was like in there. And then as soon as I heard that, I just checked out.
You know what we need?
What?
We need a savior. We need a maverick. We need a person that's so unique and original that they can look at the media, dissect it, and throw it back at them.
Right.
And
Who
we
would
do
that
have
be?
that person.
Who's that?
One and only person that, one of the
yes,
greatest.
of course.
Well, not the one and only.
Well,
Alan Abel and
man,
his daughter. Here's
I
the
can't
trailer for his
believe that
daughter's
he is not like this iconic
Warlord.
personality. He should be. He's an amazing
lived
person.
into his 90s, passed away only a few years ago, but his beautiful daughter has put together the most astounding documentary.
It
You
is.
need to go and get this.
Cain Raising Abel. That's
Oh, here we go.
Rogers here. That's right. I'm in charge of the New York office, and we believe through our 20,000 respondents that breastfeeding is a very insidious, incestuous activity that should be stopped.
This is Alan Abel.
He's been a major hoaxer here of the media for 20 years.
He's a pain. He's a real pain in the ass.
You guys are the biggest bunch of sick morons I have ever met in my life. I think all of you need long psychotherapy. Bye.
He relishes pulling a fast one on reporters.
Fooling the public by twisting the media's tail.
A veteran media hoaxer, Alan Abel, has owned up to orchestrating the scam.
He's known to some as the world's greatest hoaxer.
That's his art form. His art form is the hoax.
Others call him a complete menace to the media.
Alan Abel was my first real lesson in journalism.
To me, he's always just been my father.
He is a phony who tries to phony us up on the show. She's a phony. You're a phony. You're a phony.
That documentary should be mandatory for everyone.
Anyone that's working in the media.
What Alan Abel did, Alan Abel is humanity's conscience. And he shows you how easily even the most seasoned journalists
can be fooled
by the exploitation, the expediency of the medium they're working in.
Yeah.
The medium is the massage. Exactly. It is the message.
Yes.
You know, and
massage or the message, both.
And he is so hilarious and surreal.
The best quote, a nude horse is a rude horse.
And that comes from an organisation he created called Sinner. That was trying to clothe every naked animal in the world.
All animals should be clothed because
they
a nude horse is a rude horse.
They went and picketed the White House.
Oh my
God.
God.
People send them thousands of dollars. And he would never accept that money. He would send that back. How did he survive? He survived because there were maverick PR companies that realised that his talents were so profound in actually getting the media on board that they used him to come in and tailor their marketing programs.
Exactly. Look, he obviously was able to hone in into people's psyches, right? And what was going to push their buttons.
He was another Mel Sharp in a way.
He's beyond. No, seriously, he's
beyond Mel Sharp.
This guy should be.
How about the fat tax? You want to bring in tax, your weighed, and then your tax
and then on the you'd see people losing, shedding those kilos. I tell you, do you know what I mean? It's like
we are extremely fond of Alan Abel, and I will try and get in touch with his daughter. This guy actually went on, got a media scrum posing as Howard Hughes wrapped in bandages.
Remember, that was just.
How about the school for panhandlers?
Oh, that was gold. Look, every idea he came up with, and it was honing in on what was going on in the zeitgeist of the time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's why he was always able to get onto shows, and they would interview him.
So funny.
And it's like don't you see that this guy is taking the piss, people? He's taking the piss out of you, and don't you recognize him? It's like, why wasn't his picture in every lobby of every news show and broadcasting stations in America? It should have been.
Media needs to be critiqued.
Absolutely.
And look, you two it out here, the incredible Wisconsin-based boys from Found Footage.
Oh, yeah, the Found Footage.
And they would do similar media hoaxing, didn't they?
What was it? Someone in Steel? Those two guys ended up going on the morning shows. And that's the thing with these, the plethora of morning shows, because every major TV station
they're desperate for creativity. They're desperate for content.
Yeah. And so after a while,
you've got to exploit that.
Well, then you start to really look further afield, because if you've got 2-3 hours of morning show 5 days a week,
and they don't do their research,
you're going to start putting crap on.
Yeah.
You can't help it. You've got to fill that airspace. So then you start, and You know, you turn every channel and at the same time you see the same people all the time. So if you want to be a little bit different, you know, have a point of difference, you've got to go further afield. And that's when you start getting, you know, people like the Found Footage Boys or, you know, Alan Abel and, you know, with their stories and their craziness.
Here in Australia, we had the people who used to rework billboards, Bugger Up.
Oh, Bugger Up,
and
yes.
The billboards
That's a little bit different
but
too.
it became heavily poetic and profound, and in a way it mirrored the flaws in the products that were being sold to you and showed the exploitation technique.
But here's the things with all these shows and these mockumentaries that do shock. There's got to be a point in there where it's got or what is in zeitgeist at the time. Right. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, it's not going to stick. No. It's not going to panic people. It's not going to freak them out. There has to be something believable about it. There has to be something that can happen, you know.
Just by the very nature of media and the tsunami of data and information out there now, things do start to happen. And 7 years ago, out of KCAL9 Orange County Lake Forest Cable, this happened. How interesting is this?
Is it the end of the world as we know it, or just a hacker's hoax?
Orange County cable customers heard the ominous prediction on the air today that the world is going to end Saturday.
KCAL 9 Stacey Butler live in Lake Forest tonight. Stacey.
Well, Lena and Jeff, we've all seen those warnings, the test of the emergency broadcast system flash across our TV screens. But it's what happened immediately after that that has many across Southern California shocked at what they saw. You were watching what flashed across some television screens in Southern California just after 11 o'clock this morning. Some heard what started as an emergency alert and turned into a warning of the end of the world. This Irvine mom was shocked.
Because I kind of questioned what it was and asked somebody else that was in the house, what do you think this is? I've never seen anything like this before. It was weird.
She's not the only one. On YouTube, another Orange County woman posted the same bizarre emergency alert, and another viewer saw the alert seconds before the station returned to C-SPAN. Tonight on social media, hundreds are commenting on the end of the world prediction. One woman said, "I saw it too." A woman who lives in West Hills said she saw it while watching a show on Time Warner Spectrum. From USA Today to online chat rooms, there's a lot of talk about this Saturday, September 20th.
That's Saturday. And you know what it turned out in the end? It looks like it was the cross broadcast of a doomsday evangelist.
Right.
Hitting right at the right time when that news alert went up. And people were freaking out, you know, it's going, this is going to happen. The dead will be walking the earth.
Wow.
And it's
The
just,
Walking Dead.
So I think at the end of the day, the mockumentary is now morphed into reality, you know.
Well, it crosses into it becomes
where
reality.
we are.
It
This
becomes
notion
reality.
of fake news, but also the collision of so many signals out there. If we could have a look into the infrared and ultraviolet spectrum, the amount of microwave signals bombarding us, we would run for our lives away from it.
We would.
But we'll never know it.
No, thank God we can't see it.
I am hoping against all odds that next week we go to the scouting
don't
with
promise
Preston Dennett.
anything you can't deliver.
UFOs in the Drive-In, one of the most neglected films of research you can imagine. I want to know what
this is
film,
right up my alley.
Yeah,
for sure.
incredible.
This is film and UFOs.
Where the film buff collides with the world of the anomalous.
Exactly.
I want to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of our heart. Aspasia and Jay Katz here. We love you dearly. We have survived. And look, I mean, do you have any final words to say about the notion of the mockumentary?
Don't believe everything you hear or see.
Please check out our links because it's really...
You can see the elation in the room behind me has stopped. People were cheering and celebrating, and then it was as if a balloon would burst. A quiet permeated the room, and nobody seems to be giving any indication why.
Matt, what is it? Matt, what do you see? Just tell us what you're seeing, Matt. What's the cameraman's name?
told his name is Patrick.
Patrick, just move the camera to the screen. Show us what you're seeing on the screen. Patrick, do you read? Show us what's on